Now, so much goes into getting great sound on stage. Gear, the room, the engineer, and of course the performers. Our next session features a panel of A-list engineers representing diverse musical and professional backgrounds. Our panel will be looking at modern trends in professional live audio production at a variety of levels and situations. Key topics for the panel will include compact and surfaceless mixing, go-to equipment, live audio workflows, audio networking such as Dante and using plugins live, as well as helpful career advice and a dive into gender and racial diversity in the live sound industry. The panel's ready to roll, so I'm not going to hold it up anymore. Grab your virtual front row seat to this unique and informative conversation with the superstars of the live sound engineer world. Let's turn it over to Mike Banks, who will be moderating the panel for us.
Hey everyone, really appreciate you joining. I definitely want to say thanks to everyone out there for being with us and giving up your valuable time to enjoy this. And I really want to say thankful to my dear friends and colleagues that have been kind enough to join us on this. I just want to say before we get started that this was kind of a personal indulgence, and I hope that everyone enjoys it as much as I already am. The idea was that these are dear friends and people that I respect greatly in the industry that I've given my life to, and I just thought it would be really interesting to have all of you in a conversation, because I think most of you haven't ever really met in person. And I know that we were discussing off air that we are all fans of each other in one way or another. We may be, online friends or, seeing each other's work. So thank you all for being here. One of the first things that I wanted to put out there is, since we are providing online content, and there is a daunting amount of online content out there for young engineers or people wanting to improve their craft, how do you all think that people can navigate the just utterly overwhelming amount of information out there? Anyone want to chime in?
I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
Well, when we started this pandemic stuff, of course, I was all eager to learn stuff, and I mellowed down. I looked for a job, and now I'm working. So now I'm taking my time to learn other stuff, and as I go through this confinement, I've been learning slowly other things to see if I can use in the future.
Yeah, as far as for me, there is tons of good stuff to learn. Tons to watch, and I try to balance that a little bit with sort of soaking some stuff up a couple times a week, and then also creating some stuff. So I've been doing a bunch of mixing on my little C1500 that I have luckily showed up at my house just before the quarantine started. So I've had something to play with, and it's a great little desk. Yeah, that worked out really good.
And for anyone watching, Jim's videos are really great. So definitely check them out. They're fun to watch.
Yeah, those are on YouTube under Yak Sound. So check them out. But yeah, just I find if I spend a little bit of time creating stuff, I've been doing a lot of writing, and then I spend the rest of the time soaking things in.
So I guess what I was trying to get to is, how do we, what I find is there's so much information out there. It's really daunting. And there's a lot of, what I would call less than accurate information out there. So I guess, qualifying the information is what I find to be difficult, so anyway, so the industry has changed a lot since we've all been in it. We're not the youngest ones in the industry out there. So
anymore.
Does anyone want to lead the conversation about how the things have changed moving forward, and for people that are coming into the industry new, how they can choose what skills are most important, and technology trends and things like that are ever changing in front of us.
Yeah, I think there's so much, and the industry has changed so much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. at least for me, I've always, I've never gotten super excited over the new black gadget says it's gonna solve all my problems. So I always just stay current of what is available and what do I actually need to do my job. So, you know, like for monitors, it's now important to learn to do RF. That's going to make you more versatile. So knowing where the tools are, finding the people that you can reach out to and talk to, and have people on speed dial that you trust. And you know, so that's just kind of how I navigate through everything. I'm not sitting there putting a bunch of plugins and go, let's see what this does. My main job is to make my guys happy, and all that stuff, all that fun stuff you get to play with after. I'm not going to put it on a show until I completely trust it.
Yeah, kind of to echo what she was just saying, kind of in the same boat, trying to evaluate whether it's like for my own personal like ego, is it self-indulgent or is it necessary for the actual application that I want to use? Like a cool tool doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually going to be applicable to like my particular situation, or just knowing I always try to find the time in my own personal time to see what it actually does, what it will work, because it might actually solve a situation that might be isolated to one particular person or a particular part of the show. And knowing how to use it and implement it is like possible. Or if the instance where a problem is already, it's presented, it's like, okay, I know how that works. I could potentially solve this problem. And particularly with the situations that when you're in a monitors, like she was just saying, it's kind of more or less, you're just a static making everybody happy. But if something isn't working, you actually have a check down of potential solutions that could actually be solved in the moment, or you can circle back to it and say, hey, that was a mess yesterday, but I know this piece of gear might be able to solve this problem. What do you think? And that's kind of how I would navigate some of those types of things. But also, like she was saying, having people on speed dial. I think now people are more accessible with the internet and whatnot. Before you'd have to go to a show or knock on the club door. And back in the day, it's like, hey, I just want to come intern and work for free. I just want to learn. And like now, people that you respect and your peers are more accessible on social media, or way more like the community's kind of, I think, grown in that particular aspect because of social media. You can DM somebody, or everybody's pretty much a one touch, you know what I'm saying, to something or somebody that you need to get to.
Jim?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mike. There's so much to learn. I think the toughest thing is it's hard. We don't get to actually apply anything these days. You know, I've watched so many videos where I'm like, man, I can't wait till the next time I'm in front of a console so I can try that. And I still have no idea when that's going to be. So, so I would say for people who are breaking into the industry, you know, learn as much as you can. I think you have to specialize a little bit. If you want to be a monitor engineer, then there's certain things, like Carrie was saying, you know, RF. There's definitely a whole world of RF knowledge that everyone can be better at. And then if you want to be a system engineer, there's so much networking and software and measurement tools, and there's just all kinds of stuff to learn. The way I try to approach it is like, as far as learning a new console, sometimes I'll think, boy, I really want to get my hands on that console, but you know, having 6 different consoles, workflows going through your mind all the time, it's easy to kind of trip over things when you get back on one. So I kind of look at things situationally. I do a lot of corporate as well. So it's like, okay, I'm going to be mixing on this console with this PA system, with this system processor, and I'll just kind of bone up on all the workflows of that before the event. So I try not to over cram my brain, because it can't take all of it. And again, the speed dial, for sure. I've got people I know are experts on waves and on RF and different consoles, and I make the call when I need to.
Totally.
for me, kind of the same thing. Very practical. Nowadays, I take time to practice everything at home. When I find something new, I want to learn something new, especially in this case with D-Live that I use the most nowadays. When some update comes in, I try to learn at home. But yeah, I'm very practical. I'm very square per se on the ways I do things. I have my methods that I learned through time, yeah, I'm just echoing whatever you all say. I'm kind of the same way, like I can take so much, and because obviously life, pandemic stuff, and all this stuff, especially right now. So yeah, same thing.
I think we lost
Sorry,
Mike.
I had to, my Zoom crashed. I backed out for a minute. So, I missed your responses, but thanks for chiming in.
They were great, Mike. You should have heard them.
Yes. I'm sure they were. I'm gonna watch the recorded version later, and then I'll catch up with you all. I should go around really quick and just mention who we have here. I kind of take for granted that because I know you all and love you all so much that I think it's people out there understand who we're talking to. So Jim Yakubuski, wonderful front of house engineer, has worked with Gwen Stefani and Matchbox 20 and Peter Frampton and many others. Carrie Keys, who's been with Pearl Jam as long as there's been a Pearl Jam, basically, and also Eddie Vedder, but is also the founder of Soundgirls, which if you're not familiar with Soundgirls, soundgirls.org is a wonderful organization that I've been very blessed to do work with, and I'd like to touch on that later. Celine has been doing monitors for a little artist that you may have heard of called Billie Eilish. She just might have won 6 Grammys recently. So, but interestingly enough, Celine is the only one in the panel that, as far as I know, that has also been on a stage as a musician, as a large.
You're cutting off.
We're getting a little bit of you, Mike. You're breaking up a bit there. Your signal.
My Zoom just wants to keep crashing on me. So
oh no.
I have to switch it over to the phone. Anyway, if you can still hear me, here is the last but not least, front house engineer, monitor engineer, core manager. Has worked with Magnetic Zeros, where I met him, the neighborhood, and then is now working with From the Jewels, who I'm absolutely obsessed with right now. So I love that. So this one is to,
it's hard to hear you, man.
Who you're listening to, I think.
Yeah, it's so garbled, Mike. We can't really hear you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I guess while he's figuring that out, I personally can you hear me, Mike? Yeah, you're gonna check back in?
I'm gonna. Hey guys, I'll just bust in here quickly. I don't know if you can see me or not. My name's Mitch Gallagher. I'm hosting GearFest here from Sweetwater, and we're having some trouble with Mike's connection. I apologize for that. And so until we can get that kind of straightened out, I thought I'd just jump in here. I'm not front of house engineer like Mike is, but I'll try to get you guys going with a little conversation and see if we can't get things happening here. So let me ask you this. If someone wants to work on the level that you're working at in the industry, how do you recommend that they get started? What kind of skills do they need? How do they make the contacts and move forward into the industry?
Well,
a silence falls.
You're going to start by loading trucks and loading gear. So be ready to get dirty.
Right.
And have a good attitude while you're loading the truck. I mean, no one likes loading gear. It's not like something that I wake up every morning and go, I get to load in gear today. Great.
Right.
But that's 90% of the job. Right. And then learning signal flow, you have to know that, and just learn from everybody that you're working with. If you don't know something, make sure you ask questions on how to do it. People would rather show you the right way to do it and explain it to you than have to go troubleshoot it later on when it's not working.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
you know, I just tell people, I'm like, I'd rather take the coolest person with the best attitude that knows nothing than someone that knows everything and has a bad attitude. Because I can teach you how to mix, I can teach you how to do the show, but I can't teach you how to be nice human being.
Yeah, same here for me. It was that way actually. I don't think I'm the greatest engineer, but since day one, I tried to be good attitude and hard worker. And I mean, if new people trying to get to the mixing level right away, I think you're not going to last too much if you don't have the right attitudes and the right questions and the right people around you. You know, like knock on doors and go to clubs and talk to the techs, talk to the managers, be nosy. You know, be question everything and have a great attitude and be thankful. And that's the way you go around. And that's how I've been doing it for forever. And now I get to, you know, like get these people around me that are very professional, and I ask questions, and it's a blessing, you know, like it's a big blessing to learn from all these people. I had good people who took me under their wings and learned from them a lot. Lots of good information that you cannot pay with any Stanford, Yale, or any big university. This is the best university I ever got, and I don't regret it at all. Let's go back work now.
He's back.
I agree. What about you,
I'm back
Sweet?
to all of that. I echo all that.
Thanks.
I think being a good hang is, I think, one of the most underestimated things, I think, in this business in general. Like Jerry was saying, having the selfishness to know that I'm not the best engineer or whatever, like in that particular realm, but like being a good hang, I know way more people that are probably technically skilled, but they're just terrible people, like just terrible with people in general. And nobody, like she was saying, or like everybody's essentially been saying, nobody really wants to be around somebody who's just not a good hang. I can't even stress how much of a bummer that is, just being around people who are just like the smartest guy in the room syndrome versus just not being open to suggestions. It's just like anything that could just, it doesn't necessarily just apply to being good in monitors. It just applies to just generally in like life. Like nobody wants to hang out with anybody that's, I want to get a beer with somebody who is just like the worst, you know, personally.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have to say too, kind of along the lines of what Carrie was saying, and everyone else on the panel, you got to hang out with people who are smarter than you. And I think maybe the tough question is, well, how do you even get to do that? So, you know, being a stagehand is a good way to be around smart people and just watch people work, watch them line check, watch them troubleshoot, watch them do RF and just, you know, and there's schools out there that'll teach stuff. They'll take, you know, some of your money, a lot of your money to do that. But, you know, there's a lot of good education. And now, you know, when I started, there was no internet thing. So, you know, the magazines were the thing where I would read about what engineers were doing. But now you can watch a video on anything you want to learn. And then the other thing I'd say is volunteer and or intern. You know, if there's a little local bar, club, sound company that does, you know, festivals in the park, you know, someday we'll do that again. But when all that, you know, if you can get in there and help them load trucks and build racks and roll feeder into a case and learn how to plug it in and safely and just shadow people who are smarter than you. And I'll add again to just be a good person and just know that everyone else around you knows more than you do. So talk less and listen more.
Right on. Well, it looks like Mike is back. Looks like you've joined back in here, so I'm going to gracefully depart and let you get back to your panel.
Thanks for stepping in, Mitch. I appreciate it. It's good to be back. I just wanted to jump in on what you guys were talking about, and that I think the most important thing to me right now in this point in my career is to give back. And I know that you all feel the same way, and that's why you all agreed to do this. And so that what Jim was saying is, there are people out there that have spent time doing this. And if you can get close to any of them or as many of them as possible, and soak up their knowledge. I mean, I was very blessed to have great mentors that let me look over their shoulder and didn't try and hide their tricks and shared with me. And so now I feel a great responsibility to give back. So I think that's a super important thing. As technology has changed, we've all had to adapt and overcome. There are certain things out there. I think I wanted to touch back on something that Carrie said before about how not jumping on the latest black box and emphasizing on the gear. I think skills are super important. So I wanted to we can send it around the table, but I kind of wanted to start with Jim, just find out like what is one thing or a couple things that through the period of your career have remained constant, that are important no matter what, whether it's the 90s or today, it's still a big deal.
Yeah. For me, simplicity. I know that there are a myriad of devices, plugins, tube mics versus a good old 58. And, there's a million things that can improve our, sonically any input in the console. But I still find more times than not, I take, tune a drum real well, put a decent mic on it, put it into the console, don't do much to it, and put it up through a well-tuned, timed, optimized PA, turn it up, sounds great. So I'm, from the 80s, from the old analog days of Midas consoles and just big old land yachts out there at front of house. I still kind of do things the same way, just super straightforward. Very rarely use a lot of plugins. As a matter of fact, with this quarantine time and all the time I've had just to noodle around in my office here, I've probably played with more plugins than I have ever, and learned what I like. And I'm excited to go try some of these new tricks that I've learned. But yeah, simple signal flow, not a lot of stuff in between the input and the speakers, and I'm just a nut for having a really great tuned PA system at the end.
Carrie, what's your rock? Like, what do you lean on the most? That's the stable, important thing for you.
Keeping it simple.
Love it.
That was something, analog.
You can tell I stacked this panel.
Yeah. Analog, you had to think about what gear you were going to use. Sure, on my console, I could put a gate, a comp, an EQ freaking on every channel. Analog days, you couldn't do that. You'd have a whole semi of extra outboard gear. I still think that way. Do I need this on it? No. I've seen engineers have so many plugins that they're buried in their files, and we can't figure out what's going on because it's buried under 18 layers of stuff. So, the most important thing for working with my guys is to be paying attention to them. So keeping it simple, knowing where everything is, putting what I absolutely need on my Surface so I have access to it. And then, a couple of years ago, I think we forget on how much we, commit things to muscle memory. So our workflow, a couple of years ago, I changed some stuff on an Eddie solo tour. And you would think it would be easy, but I was so used to that's where it is. That's where I'm going to reach it. That I'm like, just put this back the way it was. Yeah. So, keep it, not changing your workflow every show just because, so finding tools that work for you and keeping and running them, and then, you know, adding things in slowly.
Nice.
So,
Jerry, what do you lean on the most?
wow. I come from the analog days, so fortunately I got to play with a lot of those toys. Nowadays I rely more on digital consoles, like Carrie and everyone else said. The gear, you don't have to like carry all this stuff. So now I have to say it. I lean on my D-Live now because I own one, and that's what I do now. I'm very practical, like I said, and everything I do, it's how I read a book from top to bottom, left to right, and I follow that to everything, and it works for me. And I'm not trying to be the cool guy to do all this kind of stuff. I do change a little bit of things, depends on what I learned, or if I tried some plugin, if I did, like I did on the D-Live, and but that's about it. I follow the protocols are very established on my workflow. So I just have to back up what everybody else said. I'm sorry, I'm not the cool guy to have this discovery.
That's great.
Like
no, you're giving credibility. So
credibility to the argument.
And like I said, like if you like what you hear from my mix or from my or from me, from my work, keep me, and if you don't, you probably tell me go home, or you tell me change a little bit of this, and we try it, and maybe we go back to the old ways, or maybe we can adopt a new way. But that's the beauty of all this new technology as well. Like you can change this thing so much. So yeah, I rely now on my digital console that I own.
You ready for me to drive it home one more time, Bangs? It pretty much just keep it simple. Is pretty much essentially what it is.
All of you,
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I think maybe even just to elaborate on it, like keeping it simple and like just trying to control as many of the variables as you can, because there's so many things that you can't necessarily account for each day. Somebody tripping over a cable, or coming unplugged, taking a massive RF hit in an arena. There's so many things that are outside of essentially what you can control. So the more that you keep simple allows your brain to like think quickly under the fly when somebody's in duress in front of 30,000 people.
Great
or
point.
If your whole line of communication goes down and the show caller can't execute something to the artist or whatever, like keeping it simple and not burying yourself in a bunch of just unnecessary stuff. I call them self-indulgent, just like tools and goodies that are like, is this for me or is it for the actual betterment of the show? And if that's kind of how I evaluate whether it's actually necessary or not, or is anybody complaining? Has anybody said anything? Have I bummed anyone out? If nobody's bummed out, it's like in the monitors, like at least how I approach it is just that it's all good until somebody says otherwise, essentially, you know what I mean? And then I always keep my line of communication open and just listen to people, because I've actually gotten more information from the artists, from people, just by listening to a conversation that they have with somebody else, because what they're saying is like not necessarily like, hey, that sounds good or bad. It's just like, oh, it sounds different. And not everybody's really good at articulating like that snare sounds weird, or make it sound like the apocalypse, these really abstract things. So for me, like I said, I just try to control as many of the variables as possible, so that when the ones that arise come up, you can kind of just act accordingly and just think quickly on your feet, which I think a lot of the problem is just being able to solve a problem quickly and effectively. And if you have too much stuff going on, you're like, well, what's going on with this? What happened there? It's just, I've seen it happen. Like when it happens to me, it's probably one of the worst feelings in the entire world. 30 seconds will seem like 3 days. It's terrible.
Yeah. For me, I've been focusing more now on I'm like an aspirin. I've been saying that lately a lot. Like I'm an aspirin. I'm your I solve your headache. So don't worry about it. Let me do it my ways, like, and sometimes we don't have time to like be fancy and be all this stuff, especially if you imagine to have an XL2 with all this gear, and then you want to try to add something to your chain and it blows your whole show. So sometimes we don't have time. We do a lot of festivals. The kind of artists that we tour with now, at least me, I don't have time to like go fancy on anything. So I have to like focus on provide what we know already and to make sure that works, because at that moment you at least, like I said, you know how to solve, how your chain goes, so it's easier to like just go in there instead of like, oh, how do I do this and how do I plan this before, there's really no time. I mean, I think that's why the level of these people that are with us today are where they are, because they simplicity, the practical ways that we learn through time. That's the experience we learn. Because probably before, I remember when I was starting, I remember always to try the coolest stuff, the biggest computer, all of this, and I bought all this money, like spent all this money on buying stuff. Now it's like I want the little compact, the less, the better. And I just want to be plug and play. For me, it's all plug and play. For me, it's all compact, and that's it.
Wow,
Yeah,
you were reading my mind. That was the. Sorry, Salim, go ahead. But I was just going to segue into how the trends now, because most of us come from an analog background, and the trend seems to be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Where before we had 48 or 52 faders on the desk, for inputs, and now things are getting. And I'm just curious how everyone feels about the downsizing that seems to be happening.
Oh, so beautiful.
But Salim, please, if I cut you off a point, please.
Oh no, I was just gonna build off of what like Jim was saying as well too, about like making a point to just get out of the way and keep it in the perspective of what sounds good to me may not necessarily sound good to the person on the other end of it. So like for me to get in and say, this sounds good to me, it sounds great, get in and do a bunch of stuff. And it could be just bumming somebody out by just like having kind of your ego get in the way of like what sounds good to particularly me. But it's not necessarily about what sounds good to me all the time. It sounds what the artist needs to perform. I've had people say, can I hear so-and-so's mix? I'm like, I'm going to warn you, this is a performance mix. This is what sounds good to this particular person to actually have them play comfortably in front of people. This is not, it's not going to, I mean, it could sound like a record, it could not, but also like just keeping that in context where like just, I try to stay out of the way as much as possible and not do a bunch of stuff and talk to people and just say, okay, that doesn't sound good to me, or argue, hey, that doesn't sound good. Maybe we should try it like this. Just kind of keeping it simple, getting out of the way and just executing what somebody asked for. Because that's what a lot of people think get buried, just being a massive bummer, just arguing.
Yeah.
I think that's when attitude hits in, because I mean, my latest experience right before this pandemic, it was really that. I was building this nice chain on my C1500 for the singer of Run the Jewels, and he's like, nope, I don't like it. Go back to and it was just a simple from one end to the other, and that's it. That's all he wanted. And I'm like, that's the way it is. They know what they want, and you don't have to be fancy. You don't have to put all these plugins. You don't have to put all these compressors and all this stuff that you wanted to add. That, like he said, like it's probably sounding very good for you, but it's not what they want to hear.
If you want to mix for you, you got to become a front of house engineer. That's the most important thing about it.
Yep. It's done. I was going to be a monitor engineer, so yeah, it's my ego. It's all crushed because in the past 4 years or past 5 years, I've just been a front of house guy. So I'm like, okay, I have to back up, chill, and listen. Go back to the listen position.
Yeah. So, anyone want to chime in on how it feels for things to be getting smaller? Like, do you find yourself resisting that trend or embracing it, or?
I'm gonna jump in on this one. I'm sorry. Yes, I love being compact. It's funny because I had a text from a friend the other day. It's like, oh, you're trying to be a compact guy because my bicycle, it's a folding bike. My kayak is a folding kayak. Now,
how do you fold a kayak?
Yes, check it out. Let's go. I'm in San Diego right now.
That's another webinar.
Yeah, that's another webinar. Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, it's just being able to, like I said, plug and play for me. Now, I travel a lot with, for example, the neighborhood. They carry everything. We carry drums. We carry every single thing. So now it's so beautiful to have 40 cases of Pelicans and SKBs, and that was not a commercial. And it's so beautiful to just knowing that my show is gonna be the same the next day and the next day and the next day. So for me, compatibility is it's amazing, and that's why I like these kind of consoles. Like having 12 faders, all these layers, and being able to build my flow upon that. So for me, it's very critical nowadays. Very, very critical, because now I can carry my computer to record. I carry the computer to test the systems. I can carry other little toys that I can add to my chain when I can, and also focus on being a production manager, because a lot of these bands that I work with now, I'm the production manager as well. So now I can diversify myself a little bit more, not worry about, oh, I have to wait for the 4 guys carrying other stuff over there on stage. I can do it myself. I can plug it in, and at the end of the festival, I can just leave. So I don't have to wait for anything, and I can have fun. And that's another thing I wanted to emphasize. Like, I don't come here to be all techie and all, like, I want to have fun. I want to mix. I want to be part of the band, in the sense of, like, everyone's having a good time, and me, I'm having a good time. If you see me, I'm always dancing. I'm trying to, create a good environment for the artists, because if the artists see me, like, happy and, like, getting into the mix, like, now I can, like, transmit that vibe that everything's okay. So that makes them more comfortable. So yeah, compact stuff. Sweet. Is the way to go.
Thanks. Because I know the answer for Jerry and Salim and myself, I want to ask Carrie and Jim. Have either one of you ever flown with the desk before? Because it's, the 3 of us have done it many times. So it's kind of a unique thing to fly with your own mixer.
No.
No, I didn't think so. That's why. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly good to never have to worry about what you're going to get.
Right.
So, anyway,
yeah, I mean, it's on festivals and things like that, I spec the same console, and like I said, everything is super simple. Load a file and it should work. It should be really easy, because I'm not I have kind of a festival file that doesn't have any plugins, so I don't have to rely on making that work for the show to work right. Or I'll just use 2 or 3 plugins, and if I can't get the Waves server all talking, then it's okay. I just bypass a couple inserts. But even just showing up and loading a file on some other company's console, it's tough. I would love to travel. It's not really been an option, because most of the consoles until recently haven't been able to pack as much punch as you can get into a small format. But boy, I tell you, there's a lot of stuff going on these small little 12 fader consoles now. So maybe in the future.
Yeah, I think for me, it was great, because like I was saying before, like, it allows me to control one of the main variables, at least for, like, when I first started with Billy, she was obviously, her equity was considerably lower and smaller on festivals, as her rise was like the complete opposite in terms of her popularity. So we'd have a 3 or 4 p.m. slot on massive festivals, or we'd be doing these small club gigs, 1,500 to 2,000 cap space, where there's so many little small variables, like a bad cable, a bad mic stand, that you have to constantly be combating every single day. And having the Surface was allowed me to do a ton of stuff in a little small, like, basically like more is less type of thing. I could do a ton of stuff with a small footprint. Or, hey, you're the middle of the guy, all the support bands in and out, you get thrown in this little small 4-foot footprint, and you have a ton of stuff here carrying. You don't fit anywhere. For us, we'd roll 2 cases on, lids come off, boom, 64 input show, 12 outputs, and everything just like up, line check in a 30-minute line check. We're done, waiting for the artist in 20 minutes. So for us, that type of thing has been great, managing like her level of popularity based on our circumstances. And as she's grown, we've had the luxury now at this point. Now it's considered a luxury. It's great. We don't have to, like, all our stuff's there. We get our own gear every single day. We don't have to pretty much play like console du jour and all types of stuff in these, specific applications. It's definitely, it puts in perspective, like, wow, like, if we didn't have those tools, it'd be considerably harder, but you still have to get it done no matter what. It just makes the anxiety and the variables that you can't control so much more easy right off the bat. I know that's how it's helped me personally in that particular regard. Like I said, at festival, you have a 30-minute line check, the line check 64 inputs, get everything set up and going, and the other band doesn't get off the stage until 10 minutes into your 30 minutes. It's like managing all that. It makes it considerably easier to just know you're going to be able to do your job with confidence. Oh, yeah.
Right.
I miss all this stress so much.
Yeah, totally.
Guys, I've got to, I've magically appeared again, and I've got to let you know that there's a minute left on the panel. So, so if you want to do a wrap up or any kind of final thoughts, this would be the chance.
Oh, wow.
I just want to, well, thank everyone. But before we run out of time, I do want to address, and I'm going to point this question to Carrie first, because she's dedicated a lot of her working life to the idea of inclusion and diversity in our industry. And I'm just wondering, how do we, how can we improve things?
That's a tough question, but yeah, I think our industry needs to evolve to the next level.
I agree.
There are so many talented engineers and techs that are women, people of color, non-binary, people that just never get a shot, that no one lets them get in the door to show people what they have. And I think it's a shame.
It is.
So I think as the industry as a whole is starting to educate themselves about it, but people being proactive, be going the extra mile, not just saying, well, I have a woman on my crew. I work with women. I work with people of color. We need to go a step further and make sure that we're actually interviewing them.
Yeah.
Giving them a shot, hiring.
I know
them.
that I wish more people would step forward. So if you're out there and you're interested in the industry, please don't be afraid. Step forward. We need you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Email
Awesome.
all of us and we'll.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
go. Right. Guys, thank you so much for doing this panel. Salim, Jim, Carrie, Jerry, and Mike. I mean, it's just been absolutely fascinating to listen to you guys. I mean, what an opportunity to have the experience and all the knowledge that you guys have and to be able to share it with everyone here at GearFest 2020. So we're just so grateful to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
Mitch.
Thank you.
Hi to everyone.